So this is a talk that I gave with a couple other people about a year and a half ago at Clever, and it's called Zen and the Art of the IT Backup. And the reason there's two other people here with me is because there's a story involved. We've got a script here. There's 7 principles we're going to go through about how you should back up your data, and we've got different roles here. I'm going to be the narrator. Chris here is going to be the master, and Jesse here is going to be the apprentice. So it's a little play. That'll probably take about 10 to 15 minutes, and then I've got maybe 10 minutes more of a talk after that. So this will not be full length, but it'll be 2/3 of the way. But it's a fun talk. It's not Nomad. It's not Nomad at all. But it's fun. I think you'll be pretty entertained. So without further ado, let's get into Zen and the Art of the IT Backup by Aaron. Dustin, where's Dustin? Dustin was supposed to do this, but he bailed out. Just replace Dustin with Chris here, and Jesse.
I could be Dustin.
We all work at Clever. That's where Jacob works as well. So we're trying to help out a little bit. We're a software development shop just about a mile north of here. We work with a lot of clients. If you have any questions about what we do, it's a lot of fun. We've been growing. We got about 26, 27 people, and we're not stopping. We actually are going to be celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year. We just had it, but we're going to throw an official party sometime soon. All right. So like I mentioned, there's 7 principles that we're going to talk about today. Principle 1, this is where we're about to get into our screenplay, is called scope. So, excited, the new apprentice jumped right into his master's training server. The apprentice asked,
"Master, which file should I back up?"
The master replied,
Does not the mother bird care for all her fledglings? Will not the shepherd watch over his entire flock? Therefore, one must back up all files in one's care, no matter how small or insignificant we consider them to be. Each file has its importance and must not be overlooked.
The apprentice was excited to perform his first backup. So he said,
I will back up all of my important files, but not system and program files, as they can always be reinstalled from CDs that came with the computer and program.
The master said nothing. The next day, the hard disk on the master's training server crashed. 2 days later, the apprentice was still trying to find the CDs. Lesson to learn: back up all of your data. Principle 2 is repetition. On a fine spring day, the apprentice approached the master and asked,
Master, after I had restored the training server last month, I backed up all of the data, and I haven't backed it up since. So, Master, I wonder, how often should I perform the backup process?
The master replied,
The world is constantly changing, as does your data. As the world changes, you must adapt. As your data changes, so must that data be backed up.
The apprentice said,
I work all day long, every day.
Therefore, you must back up all day long, on every day.
The master stated,
I see your logic, Master, but I do not have time to make a backup, as I'm much too busy.
The apprentice complained. As if on cue, the power went out, the room went black, and the master let out a faint sigh. The lesson to learn: continuously back up your data. Principle 3. That's distribution. The apprentice was now feeling confident. He was backing up all his data and backing it up as he worked. He approached the master and asked,
Master, now that I am consistently backing up all of my files, have I reached backup awareness?
Young grasshopper,
the master instructed.
You have learned well to back up all of your files and have been mindful to continuously protect your work, but you cannot achieve Zen until you distribute your backups far and wide. Does the gossip monger keep her secrets to herself? So long as your backups are in one place, they are subject to the whims of fortune.
The apprentice ignored the master's advice, as he presumed his backup was stored safely in the master's training temple. But a powerful storm descended in the night and blew away the temple and all its contents. The apprentice was frantic.
Master, the storm has destroyed my computer and all my backups. What am I to do?
Do not despair.
The master comforted the apprentice.
For yesterday, I added all the files in the training temple systems to our online backup, which distributes the files far and wide, way beyond the reach of the storm and other potential chaos.
The lesson to learn here: keep backups off-site. Principle 4, history. The apprentice was appreciative of the master and had restored all his files from the online backup. He had learned his lesson. 6 months later, he approached the master saying,
I have backed up all my files and do so as I work. I make sure to distribute them far and wide. I no longer have need of your online backup to the remote backup temples for my files.
So be it. I will free up my storage and remand the responsibility to the apprentice,
stated the master.
Now quickly, go and examine your system.
The apprentice examined his systems and discovered a virus had infected hundreds of important but rarely used files. He restored his day-old backup, but found those files were infected. He remembered he had a temporary backup a month ago. He loaded this backup and found it to be corrupt as well. As he scoured his systems, he found the virus had struck 4 months before. He rushed to the master and said,
Master, your backup temple has the only virus-free backup.
But the master had already ordered the storage erased. The master stated,
The apprentice must respect and care for his backups, as you respect and care for your elders, for one day he will rely on them to provide wisdom and knowledge.
The lesson to learn: keep old backups. Principle 5, verification. The apprentice kept his notes in a document that he saved on his computer frequently. It had all his important information concerning everything he had learned from the master. One day, while working on his notes, the master issued an urgent request for the apprentice. A palace contingent was coming to visit the master, and the apprentice was to travel to the village to obtain fare for the event. In his haste, the apprentice typed the master's list of supplies into a new document, but overwrote his training notes. At first he despaired, but the apprentice was confident because he backed up all his files consistently as he worked. He distributed them far and wide and kept a history of his old backups. So he loaded his day-old backup to restore his notes file and found that his backup had failed. He went back a week, 2 weeks, a month. They had all failed. He had to go back 2 months before he found a good backup. The master quietly stated,
To trust in your backup is only half the task. Without the ability to restore your files is to back up in vain.
The lesson to learn here: test your backups. Principle 6, security. The apprentice diligently applied security measures about the training temple network system. He installed firewalls to keep the hackers and crackers out. He configured virus, spyware, and malware protection to keep his data safe. The apprentice instituted a strong password policy that mandated complexity, expiration, and enforcement. He was proud of the substantial security measures he had undertaken.
Master, my security measures have made our facility all but impenetrable.
The apprentice beamed with pride.
Truly, I have protected all of our data.
Later that night, during the evening meal, the apprentice picked up his napkin and found a backup tape from the training temple, labeled with yesterday's data. The master had picked up the tape that day while in the training temple, which lay on the table next to the backup device. A post-it note was affixed to the tape, which read, I guess it was from the master.
Sometimes in life, we insist on focusing on the complicated and technical while neglecting the mundane and simple.
The lesson to learn: secure your backups, both technically and non-technically. Principle 7, our final principle: continuity. The apprentice had now studied for many months and felt sure he had achieved the art of IT backup.
Master,
The apprentice declared,
I consistently back up all my data, keep copies of both current and historical on-site and off. I test my backups and keep them safe and secure. Tomorrow, We take final exams using our computer network. Surely, once I pass the exams, I will have attained the zen of the art of IT backup.
Ah, Grasshopper,
The wise master retorted.
you have worked hard, but you have not learned patience. Always remember, although what may look like readiness may not be so, always be prepared.
The apprentice did not understand and became frustrated. The apprentice studied hard that night, preparing for the exams to be given first thing in the morning. At the break of dawn, he was stationed at his computer in the lab, confident he would ace his exam and show he had attained Zen. The master stood at the head of the lab when his assistant ran into the room. "Master," the assistant panted, "the exam server has crashed, and the part to fix it has to be special ordered and won't come in until next week." The master looked at the apprentice and just shook his head. The lesson to learn here: make sure you can restore your backups quickly. So that's the moral of our story. The apprentice, in Epilogue, the apprentice worked hard and reflected over the teaching of the master. During the trials and tribulations of backup, he learned, and from that learning, he became humble. The master was pleased.
Master,
The apprentice spoke softly.
you have been kind to impart your knowledge to a lowly apprentice such as myself. Over the past year, I have not shown myself to be worthy.
My young apprentice, you have shown great persistence. You have learned the 7 principles of IT backup, namely scope, repetition, distribution, history, verification, security, and continuity.
And there's all 7 of those listed. And that concludes our story today. Let's give these two especially a big hand, everybody. Yes. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jesse. Now I'm just going to finish up about 10 more minutes of stuff. We did not write this story. This is something online. I forget who wrote it, so I can't credit them. But it's not us. We just enjoyed reading it. We found these particular notes just from a gist. That's a copy of the story. But there's a lot of good principles here. We reviewed all 7 of them: scope, repetition, distribution, history, verification, security, and continuity. And kind of when I first heard about this tool, or not this tool, these kind of 7 principles, I go in the DevOps mindset. I wanted to automate as much of this as I could. And a lot of this you can automate, a lot of it you can't. So the idea of testing your backups, you can automate, and I'm sure it is doable, certainly, but my small brain can't handle the logic involved with being able to automatically test to make sure a backup succeeded, other than just unzipping a file and making sure that it actually has data in it. But as far as the first 4 specifically, scope, repetition, distribution, and history, you can automate those pretty easily. And we did that using a tool, and that's kind of what I'm going to talk about just the last 5 minutes, is a tool that we built that's open source, that we've been using it for about 2 years or so, and we'd love, if you would like to help out with any of it. Again, it's on GitHub. Let me get to that tool. It's a tool called Jackpot Backup, and the reason this exists, let me hop to here. So here's the GitHub page. It's on Clever's GitHub. Let me zoom in on that a little bit. The way it got its name is we wanted to back up data for days at a time, but then months at a time, and then also years at a time, and we kind of landed on the number 777. So the idea with this tool, Jackpot Backup, is it's a shell script that you can run. Right now, that's what it is. And we're going to do a demo of that here in a second. But the premise of Jackpot Backup is it will keep all of your backups for the last 7 days, the last 7 months, and the last 7 years. And we've been using this for 2 years now, so we can actually prove that has worked. So again, just you can go to Clever's GitHub and find Jackpot Backup, and it's got a README kind of everything that you need to do to get it running. Let's do, the idea behind it is, the reason it's a shell script is there's this concept that we kind of came across called Taco Bell programming. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that, but it's the idea that if you go to Taco Bell, I've never worked there, so I can't comment on this, but the thought is that there's maybe 10 ingredients or so. I'm sure that's that's probably a misnomer, but there's a small amount of ingredients, and the menu is, 100, 200 more items. So the idea with Taco Bell programming is you use kind of these low-level tools to build whatever you need. This does go against, I think, Unix philosophy to some extent because, again, according to this is what Jacob told me, Unix philosophy is everything does its own specific job, so one tool, one job. We're not doing that here. Shell is a pretty agnostic tool, so I guess you could say we are building a tool called Jackpot Backup to do this one thing, but we kept it low level just because we wanted to make it accessible to the most possible environments that we could. So let's do a little demo just about that, and I've just got it pulled up here. Now I'm going to full screen on this side of it, but if you clone the repo down, you get whatever the code is. You don't need to know any of this, but the part that is important to you is you have this conf.sh. Now this is going to have a password in here. It's a local database password for my own personal thing, so it's there's literally nothing you can do with that. But just wanted to make sure no one was copying that down. If you did, it doesn't matter. Anyway, the idea here is that Jackpot Backup will back up whatever you want to, and the way you hook into that is whatever you want to back up, it will provide to you a directory here which you can dump everything into. So if it's MySQL, if it's Mongo, if it's SQL Server, you could run just a script to do that. Anything you want to back up, it's going to dump it in this file here, and then it's going to zip it up. And then you've got an after backup hook as well if you wanted to import that file, that zipped file, to another server, to anything else, anything you need to do. We've got Lifecycle hooks in here. And let me do just a run through of what this actually looks like. So this is the whole directory again. Jackpot Backup is going to, by default, store everything in these backups directory. So we've got daily, monthly, yearly, and we've got a latest tar.z. Everything just gets tarred in there. If we hop into backup there, you can see we've got, I guess I haven't run this in a while. That would store this. If you ran this every single day, it would store the latest 7 days. I ran this just before the talk, so I had not run it for 7 days, so it did not store anything. It wiped out anything that would have been older than 7 days in this directory. But if we look in monthly, I bet I've run this in the last 7 months. That's not the directory. Yeah, so it looks like I ran this one time in March. This is a pretty old project for us. And then if I go to yearly, we've got something from, I changed the timestamps back then. So we've got something from 2017, 2016 even. Again, I like the new timestamps a lot better. I mean, let me run this, and that'll be kind of the end of this. If I just run the script, it's got a bunch of logs of what's happening. We've got beginning Jackpot Backup. You can see we're hooking into the main function here. That's where you actually say what you want to run. You can create your latest backup here if there's any after backup hooks. Anyway, I don't mean to dawdle on this too much, but we've tried to cover those first 4 principles so that you can back up all your data. That's up to you to kind of put that in there, but we have the capabilities. Back it up often. We've got, again, that's where the 777 comes in. This automatically, if you set this up on a cron job, for example, to run once a day, then over 7 years especially, you'll have 7 days worth of backups, 7 months worth of backups, 7 years worth of backups. We did include some offsite capabilities in this. So we've got default configuration for S3 and Google Cloud. As we explore other options like even Drive, for example, we'll add support for that. But theoretically, you can add all that in that kind of after backup hook right here. So it's kind of we don't know how much we need to stick in there for configuration versus how much you would just do on your own. But we tried to. That's a bunch of. There we go. We tried to kind of just build a simple tool. Again, we've used it on a lot of our projects, and it's been a neat way to just automatically set up backups. You do a minor configuration right here, and then you're golden. You can back it up to S3, Google Cloud, etc. Anyway, that's the tool here. There's not much to it, but if you want to learn more, we've got a README right here. And this is just kind of, again, this is related to the story just because we kind of created this after we read about the story and thought these are really good principles. How do we implement these easily? We don't want to have to redo this process every single time we have a new project that's on a new server and everything. So this was our idea behind that. So that's more or less everything. I do just want to finish up. Thanks everyone for letting us come talk. Not that you let us, we kind of injected ourselves in here. You will get to hear Jacob's talk about Nomad, relatively soon over the next few months. He was really excited to give it, and I know that he's the dude is just incredibly smart. So we're Clever. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, anywhere. Clever.com. We do still have Clever Labs. That's our virtual reality, augmented reality kind of handle. And I think that is it. Yep, that's all we got. So again, big thanks to Jesse and Chris for helping out. If this seemed rigid at all, it's because we kind of did this about an hour ago is when we first thought about doing this. So anyway, that's all we got. Thanks a bunch, everyone.